Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to an all-new Talkin Movies. As always, I'm your host, the real Geno Reynolds, and today we're going to be talking about The House with a Clock in Its Walls, starring Jack Black and Cate Blanchett. This movie is based on the first book of a series that began with author John Bellairs in 1973. Also, this movie is directed by That can't be right? Eli Roth. Hostel? Eli Roth? The Green Inferno? Eli Roth? That? Eli Roth? Okay. This is going to be mostly a spoiler-free review, but I will be talking a bit about the plot, so some minor details might be said throughout, so you've been warned. And also, there's a bit of a setup here, so bear with me. After the death of his parents, young Lewis goes to live with his estranged Uncle Jonathan, played by Jack Black. After arriving, Lewis begins to learn that there is something off about his uncle's home. After confronting his uncle about this, Uncle Jonathan reveals that he, as well as his neighbor Mrs. Zimmerman, played by Cate Blanchett, are real magic users. After not so much twisting of his uncle's arm, Jonathan agrees to teach his nephew to become a warlock just like himself. All while this is happening, there is a ticking of a clock coming from somewhere within Uncle Jonathan's house. Ticking, 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 that occasionally chimes, counting down to something bad. It's up to Jonathan, Mrs. Zimmerman, and young Lewis to find the clock and put a stop to the ticking and the evil behind it. Okay, so here's something that I didn't think I was going to say about this movie. You ready? Here we go. For the most part, I really like this one. While I did have some issues with it that I will discuss here in a bit, I had a really good time with this movie. No pun intended, by the way. First, let me talk about Eli Roth. I like him when he's in movies as an actor. The Bear Jew is one of my favorite characters in movies when he comes walking out that bat. Anyway, I was just being a little silly earlier and calling him out for being the director of this movie. Though I will say that on paper, he is kind of a strange choice given the history of the movies that he has written and directed. When you look at the stuff that he's been involved in, the words kids movie isn't the first thing that comes to mind. Truth be told, there has only been one movie that he has written that I've liked, and that's The Man with the Iron Fists. On the director side, before now, the list isn't that much better. The only thing that I really liked was his segment that he directed for Inglourious Basterds, and though his Death Wish was okay, it wasn't great. That being said, it's never really been his style that didn't work. It was the movies themselves. I think that Roth may have found his niche with the scary kids movie genre, because while this movie is pretty safe imagery-wise, there are times that the atmosphere is still really creepy. Him pushing the edges of the side of scary helps make the movie a little more watchable for the adults, but not totally scaring off the kiddos. There were only two small things that I wasn't really a fan of with this one. First, the few times that the laughs relied on potty humor fell pretty flat with me. One is a baby pee joke, which I can't really tell you about because it would be a pretty big spoiler. And the other involves a poop joke, or I guess I should say a compost joke, and a plant-based winged lion. Hey, it's a movie about magic, folks. Just roll with it. They go to this same joke, or a version of this joke. I believe it was something like 3 or maybe even 4 times. And it really wasn't all that funny the first time. That being said, this stuff did not take up a lot of the movie, so not a big issue. The other thing that I didn't like was when Owen Vaccaro, who played the young warlock in training Lewis, had to act upset or sad. While he was fine or even really good in the rest of the movie, there were a couple of scenes where he had to show some real emotion, and it didn't come off so convincing. That being said, he's only been in something like 6 movies, so I'm not going to be real hard on him. I mean, child actors, sometimes you got to give a little. Now, with my very minor gripes out of the way, let's talk about the rest of the movie, what I liked. First was the characters. While you can say that some of them are pretty much stereotypes, such as Tarby and Woody, who are Lewis's bullies at school, and that some of the characters are just playing to their strengths, like Jack Black as Uncle Jonathan. For the most part, everyone in this is at least entertaining. At the very least, entertaining. I think that my favorite character has to be Mrs. Zimmerman, played by Cate Blanchett. To explain why, I have to talk about the movie's time period and dance around a big plot reveal. This movie is set in 1955, and an underlying factor of this one is the effect that World War II had on the people of that time. We learn near the beginning of the movie that Mrs. Zimmerman is having issues with casting magic. While at first it's played off in comedic fashion in insultingly friendly spats between her and Jonathan, we learn later that there is a much sadder reason why her magic has suffered for years. Part of her arc, as well as Jonathan and Lewis's, is that you have to be able to accept the things that have happened and move forward. When it comes to the plot of what war does to people, it not only plays into Mrs. Zimmerman's character, but of another character as well, and that one I am not going to spoil. When it comes to who should watch this movie age-wise, I would warn that some of the imagery might be a little much for the kiddo that scares easily. While some of the magical creatures and items come off as humorous and fun, such as the chair that acts like a dog or the paintings and pictures that keep changing, there are also some scenes involving creepy dolls, living jack-o'-lanterns, and other evils that might frighten someone that isn't really ready for it. The movie's characters, for the most part, still play a lot of the scarier scenes in a comedic fashion, so that helps lighten up the atmosphere a bit. I don't think most kids will have a real issue, but I thought I'd better throw a warning out there anyway. When it came to the overall story, while some of the twists and turns are kind of obvious, I didn't really mind. I think that this movie found a decent balance of being simple enough for kids to follow while being deep enough that adults could find it interesting as well. There are also themes about growing up, being yourself, again, moving on, and believing in yourself. So the movie has a lot going for it there when it comes to different themes. When it comes to the villain of the movie, I don't want to give away too much because that would spoil the fun. One thing that I will say is that I can always enjoy a villain that is good at manipulating a hero, especially an experienced hero. Getting that inexperienced hero to do their bidding is something. Whenever they can manipulate that character, it's always fun for me. Being that the overall basis of this movie is magic, there's a lot of fun to be had with how a villain can go about doing this. Well, not a perfect movie. I had a lot more fun with it than I thought I would. I saw the trailer for this and thought it looked too much like the Goosebumps movie, which that one really didn't do anything for me. After seeing it, I feel that the movie offered a lot of fun, humor, and kiddo scares for the younglings, while under the surface a deeper story and some creepier atmosphere for the adults. As I mentioned earlier, this movie is based on a book series, so I could see more of these being made if this one does pretty well at the box office, and given that there are 11 more books with the character of Lewis in them, there is a lot more magical fun to be had, and as of right now, I'm all for it. That's going to be all for this edition of Talkin Movies. If you like what you've heard here, please subscribe to the Real Geno YouTube channel, like this video, and if you have anything to say about this movie, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below. Until next time, I'm your host, the Real Geno, Geno Reynolds. See you later.